This presentation today is on friendship between young men. It's always been a very important topic, without a doubt. Is a topic that is crucial for the individual happiness of the young man. It's also crucial for the well-being of society. If we don't have young men who are capable of developing good friendships, then the men that will be in the future will be hampered by their lack of friendship, sociability, and ability to deal with others properly. It is an important presentation because friendship, especially among young men, is under tremendous attack from various angles. This talk or this presentation is about one of these attacks, a particular kind of illness in society that affects young men disproportionately, and what schools and parents can do about it. All of this in 20 minutes. The illness that I'm talking about is IDD, Intimacy Deficiency Disorder. I can define it as the difficulty or the inability or incapacity to have deep, meaningful friendships. Now, I know that many a young man, when hearing about intimacy deficiency disorder, will say, come on, I'm a guy, I don't need to have intimate relationships. And that is false. Guys need intimate relationships. It's just that they need them in their own way, on their own terms. Intimate, by the way, does not mean romantic in this context. It means deep, it means trusting, it means loyal. The true manly relationship of friendship that the two young males would have. Now, I must say that not everyone, obviously, is subject to this illness. Being at a boys' school, I see many examples to the contrary. But still, it's a topic and an illness worth discussing. First, male friendship is project-based. Two men working on something together is a great way for them to get to know each other. And it is so because they can do so without recognizing that this is what is happening, even better, without actually intending for that to happen. But by doing something together, they share time and experiences, and as a result, they get to know each other. This is what happens in participation in sports teams. It happens in the schools, frankly. It happens in professional work. It happens in any type of civic or service organization that any man may belong to. What happens in all these organizations, all these groups coming together, is that the individual is not focused on other people, right? Two people may come together through that organization, through that team, through that school, and they're not necessarily looking at each other. They're focused on a common goal. They're both looking in the same direction. It is therefore not only where guys meet other guys, but where friendships are really developed. They're not necessarily meeting places, they're activities that provide a structure for friendship to develop. They are the stage for friendship. Second, friendship really benefits from young men being physically present in a particular way. Two people need to be physically present, they need to be together to share an experience. They can't really be together without being physically present. Now, the recent world experiment, I would say worldwide experiment that we're undergoing, or hopefully have undergone in some areas, of relating virtually, is now what we expected it would be, a total failure. Relating virtually to one another has failed. But this is especially so for young people. Listen to what Pope Francis told us in his newest encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, talking about digital media and the inadequacies of that media and compare with physical presence. He says, digital media lack the physical gestures, facial expressions, moments of silence, body language, and even the smells, the trembling of hands, the blushes and perspiration that speak to us and are a part of human communication. Digital relationships, which do not demand the slow and gradual cultivation of friendships, stable interaction, or the building of a consensus that matures over time, have the appearance of sociability. Yet, they do not really build community. Digital connectivity is not enough to build bridges. It is not capable of uniting humanity. Very appropriate to this talk about friendship, friendship between young men. Let me use his text and turn it to the positive and include in here physically present, in-person interaction. It would say, being physically present or physically present interactions afford the physical gestures, facial expressions, moments of silence, body language, and even the smells, the trembling of hands, the blushes and perspiration that speak to us and are a part of human communication. The human communication that happens when two people come together, when they're physically present to one another. So the two building blocks of friendship between young men: one, project-based, goal sharing. Number two, physically present. It is much harder for guys to develop true friendship without either one of those, even more so without both. Now, this sharing of time and experiences while working on a common project, while being physically present, allows for intimacy. It's the antidote to the IDD illness that I was talking about. What does it look like? Well, it provides for a deep and mutual knowledge, understanding of each other. It goes beyond externals. It's how we learn the other person's reactions, the beliefs, the fears, what the person really is about. And it needs to be mutual, of course. Also, it's not only the knowledge of the other person, but it's an appreciative knowledge. It's the appreciation for what we know about the other person. Knowledge without appreciation does not lead to intimacy. It is also and especially a unique knowledge. The special intimacy that grows when we know something about the other person that other people don't know. That is, when we have been allowed to know something about that person, which that person doesn't share with many others or with anyone else. That builds a lot of trust, because I have been entrusted with something about you that you don't that readily entrust many people with. It's a great sign of trust. It's a great builder of trust once we are recipients of that knowledge, and we also provide some of that knowledge ourselves to the other person. This allows for an intimacy without ever talking about feelings and vulnerabilities, which is much safer for young males and frankly much more natural for them to do so. So let me now talk about what can schools and parents do to facilitate good friendships between young men. I'm going to propose 4 ideas. Number 1, schools themselves with the right peer group are a great stage for male friendship to develop. Schools provide for a lot of opportunities for young men to share time and experiences while involved in common projects, classes, sports, clubs, trips, right? All these activities that schools organize are very good ways for young men to come together and share the experiences together, share their time together. Schools appeal to young men's desire to belong to a group, to a tribe, to a pack, right? To be part of this group. It is in this context that a young man can feel comfortable trying to make himself fit into that group. And it is very common, most common, that young men, when coming to school, they're going to try to fit into the group that the school represents. They will want to be part of that tribe or that pack. C.S. Lewis, in his wonderful masterpiece, The Screwtape Letters, describes what a young man goes through when trying to be part of this group. And he says, there's a subtle play of looks and tones and laughs by which a mortal can imply that he is of the same party as those to whom he is speaking. There's a subtle play of looks and tones and laughs by which we indicate to others that I belong, that I'm part of this group as well. Many years ago, I was at a social event at the Heights School where I work, and I overheard a conversation between a parent at the school and a couple who had children but not here at the school. And this couple asked this parent why she had brought her sons to the Heights. And of course, when you're the headmaster of a school and you hear that question from one of your parents, your ears perked up, right? You try to understand at least what drove this particular parent to the school. And this parent said, well, when I was looking for a school for my 2 sons, I was looking to buy a peer group. I was looking to buy a peer group. Interesting way to look at it. Her point was that she knew that her sons would make best friends with their classmates. And therefore, she wanted to surround her sons with the kind of peers that she would be comfortable with, because she knew that her sons would not only be safe, but they would be drawn to become better people. They would be drawn to activities through those friendships that would make them better young men. So that's the first solution that I have, right? Schools with the right peer group that offer you parents those peers, those potential friends for your sons. The second solution that I have is looking for other project-oriented groups besides schools. So it could be outside of school athletic teams, it could be artistic groups, definitely faith-based groups, service communities and groups as well. Any smaller group that is not part of a school, but that you can trust and you think that your son would be a good participant in. These are important not only because the purpose of the group, that is very good for your son to be involved with service, to be in a faith-based environment, to play sports and so forth. So it's not only because of the purpose of the group, but also because there are great stages for friendship. Now, typically, your son is not going to spend as much time in those groups as in the school. But, perhaps those groups may offer a closer pre-selecting group, peer group, because they're all interested in the same thing that is the goal of the group that your son is interested in. It is important thing when looking at these groups to not only look at the peer group, but look at the leaders. Who's leading? Who's the coach? Who's the head of this faith-based group? Who's the head of this service group? Look at the leaders, because they're gonna imprint that group with their tone, with their own values and worldviews. So it's important to understand who those are and to be people that you can trust. The third solution that I want to offer is to keep the young men away from the screens as much as possible. We are rapidly moving into a direction where young men are fixated into the screens, and they're paying too much attention to them. And unfortunately, the last few months with the pandemic, we as schools have even driven the students more into the screens. I think it's important to step back and trying to peel them off the screens as much as possible. The more they are in this virtual world that the screens provide for them, the harder it will be for them to be sociable. The harder it definitely is for them to gain self-confidence. Screens have a way to undermine self-confidence through social media, and that's a whole other topic that we could get into at some point. Screens are falsely replacing real friend time with fake friend time, where a young man may be led to believe, at least for a while, that I have a lot of friends because, all these people in social media. But they're really not friends, not the same way as the person who is physically present, as Pope Francis indicated before. A very, very good professor, American history professor here in Washington, D.C., by the name of Professor Edward Smith, used to talk about how, years from now, perhaps centuries, when archaeologists of the future are trying to figure out whatever happened to this great Western civilization, we should also say Eastern civilization. But what happened to this great civilization of the 20th and 21st century? Why is it that it was so powerful and it went totally in ruins? And they'll be looking through all the ruins and they won't be able to determine exactly what happened. But they will know that whatever happened through the screens. Because they will go and they'll find that in every home there were multiple screens. Every office building had at least one or two per room. That some people died clutching these things in their hands. And that even they had temples dedicated to the screens, where there was nothing but apparently seats facing a huge screen. So we don't know what destroyed these people, this powerful civilization. Whatever it did, it came through those screens because that's what it was all in common. We have to think critically about a young man's consumption of screens. Most likely we have to think critically about our own consumption of screens as well. Finally, the fourth point is to facilitate gatherings at home. Multi-generational gatherings provide a safe setting and examples. They're very good for young men to be able to witness friendship of older men. Now, they have many counterexamples in the entertainment industry, in other parts of their lives, so that it's good for them to see older men really developing, having friendships with each other. When providing for this multi-generational gatherings at people's homes, right, grandparents, parents, young men and women, we have to make sure that they are fun. Right? Make sure they are fun. It makes sense to plan them together with the young people, to figure out, okay, what is it that we could do together that would be fun? What kind of games that could be fun? Even you have to look at the conversation. It's really good for young men to see older men in conversation with their peers. But you also have to have conversations that are attainable to them, that they can follow, that they can enjoy, that they can even participate, be part of. We have a lot to learn from young people as well, and a lot of topics we can ask their opinion, not only to see how they think about it, but also for us to know about those topics. It is also a great chance to observe how they relate to their friends and to hopefully guide them in that direction as well. So let me just conclude with a positive note, because sometimes when talking about illnesses like IDD, we can become fairly pessimistic about the state of society and especially how that state is affecting young men in our society. But let me conclude by saying that it really is all good news. IDD is real, but it is easier to prevent than to overcome. However, it is also possible to overcome. And that is the case because friendship is natural. Friendship is attractive. All we have to do is give it the room for it to grow, and it will grow naturally. People need friends. People want friends. For young males, that means time and experiences together. Once a young man has an experience of that deep, true, loyal friendship that we're talking about, he will be inundated with the happiness that friendship brings. Once a young man has a good friend, he will be hooked on friendship. He himself will recognize IDD and know how to avoid it. Thank you very much for having me today, and all the best of luck for the rest of the conference. Thank you.